Hey, welcome to Sleepy Old World. Settle into wherever you are tonight and let this one carry you somewhere warm. Tonight we're going somewhere that feels both very familiar and surprisingly far away. We're going to a diner in a mid-sized American city in the year 1957. A corner booth, a chrome counter with red vinyl stools, the smell of coffee and bacon grease, and something sweet from the pie case by the register. And behind that counter, a woman named Patty, who has already been on her feet for 3 hours by the time most people sit down for breakfast. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from tonight. I genuinely read every single one. Now, let us go back. Picture this. It is a Tuesday morning in November of 1957, and it is 4:45 in the morning. And somewhere in a small apartment above a dry cleaner's in a mid-sized American city, an alarm clock is going off. The hand that reaches out from under the covers and silences it belongs to Patty. She's 24 years old. She has dark hair that she pin-curled the night before, and she has the particular kind of face that looks very young when it's asleep, and considerably older when it is awake and working. She lies still for exactly 4 seconds after silencing the alarm, not because she's going back to sleep. She knows she's not going back to sleep. She has not gone back to sleep on a Tuesday in 3 years. Those 4 seconds are something else. They are the last 4 seconds of the day that belong entirely to her, and she uses them carefully, which is to say she uses them to breathe once, in and out slowly, before the rest of it begins. Then she is up. The apartment is cold in the way that only old apartments are cold in November, the kind of cold that settles into the walls overnight and does not lift until the radiator has been hissing for an hour. The floor is linoleum, a pattern of cream and green that has been worn soft in the path between the bed and the bathroom door. Patty knows every inch of it. She does not turn on the overhead light. She pulls on her housecoat by feel, ties it at the waist and pads to the bathroom, where the overhead light does go on and is harsh and makes her blink. The mirror above the sink shows her the pin curls. She has done this enough nights that unwinding them is automatic. She pulls each one loose, fingertip to the curl, and the wave that falls out is the result of sleeping on those pins for 7 hours, which is not comfortable, but the shape it produces is worth it. She has 16 curls in total. She knows because she counted them once, in a moment of particular boredom, and now she always counts them without meaning to. 16 curls. Then the brush. 50 strokes, her mother used to say, though Patty has reduced this to something closer to 30 because her shift starts at 6, and 30 is enough to get the effect without making her late. The face in the mirror is a face she knows very well and has complicated feelings about. Not bad feelings, not exactly. Just the feeling of knowing something too thoroughly, of having looked at the same thing in the same mirror under the same light at the same hour every morning for enough years that it stops surprising you. She applies her lipstick, a deep rose, almost red. This is not vanity, or not only vanity. In 1957, a waitress showing up to work without lipstick would be like showing up without her uniform. The lipstick is part of the job. Her manager, a solidly built man named Mr. Hobart, who has been running diners since before Patty was born, has a list of appearance requirements posted inside the employee coat room, and he checks it the way other men check stock prices. Hair neat, uniform clean and pressed, shoes polished, lipstick on, nails clean and short, no perfume, because perfume and bacon grease do not belong in the same room. She already knows all of this. She learned it on her first day and has not needed to reread the list since. The uniform is hanging on the back of the bathroom door. She ironed it the night before, which she does every Sunday night for the week ahead. 5 uniforms on hangers in the small closet, each one pressed and ready. The uniform is a shirtwaist dress in pale blue, a colour that reads as clean without showing every splash, with a white collar and a small white apron that ties at the back. The dress hits just below the knee. The shoes are white leather Oxfords, low-heeled, with thick rubber soles that she resoled herself at the shoe repair shop on the corner when the original soles wore through. She had been wearing them for 2 years by then. She wore them for another year after that. She dresses quickly, clips on her name tag, which says simply Patty in raised black letters on a white plastic background, wraps the apron strings around her waist twice and ties them in the front. A specific kind of bow, the kind that will not come undone during a rush. She has tied this bow enough times that her hands do it without instruction from her brain. It is 5:05. She has 55 minutes to get to the diner. The apartment kitchen is small enough that she can stand in the centre of it and touch both walls with her arms extended, which she has never actually done but could. She fills the percolator, measures the coffee, sets it on the burner. While it heats, she eats a piece of toast with butter and half a banana, standing at the counter because there is no reason to sit down for a meal this early and this quick. The coffee's ready in 4 minutes. She pours it into a thermos. She does not drink coffee at the diner. This sounds strange, she knows, but the explanation is simple. She is so used to pouring it for other people that the act of sitting down with a cup herself at a table or a counter feels almost fictitious, like a doctor taking her own blood pressure. She takes her coffee outside in the cold, on the walk to the diner from the thermos. She locks the apartment door behind her. The dry cleaners downstairs is dark. The street is empty. The sky has not begun to lighten yet, not even at the edges, and the streetlights make small yellow pools on the sidewalk that she walks through one by one like a game she forgot she was playing. It is a 9-minute walk to the diner. She has timed it so many times that she could tell you it is 9 minutes in good weather, 11 minutes in ice, and 6 minutes if she is late and walking fast, which she tries not to be, because arriving at a run is not how she likes to begin a shift. She likes to arrive calm. She has a theory, which she has never said aloud to anyone, but which has proven true often enough that she considers it established fact. How you arrive is how you start, and how you start is how the morning goes, and the morning in a diner either sets you up or takes you down. She arrives calm. The diner is called Mel's, not because the owner is named Mel, but because the previous owner was, and the current owner, whose name is Donald Hobart, bought it 8 years ago and decided not to change the sign because the sign was already part of the neighbourhood. There is a logic to this that Patty has come to appreciate. The sign says Mel's, and the neighbourhood knows what that means, and that is its own kind of worth. The diner occupies the ground floor of a 2-story brick building on a corner lot. The front of it is glass, floor to ceiling, which means it glows from the inside. When Patty comes around the corner at 5:14 in the morning, she can see the light from half a block away, warm and yellow against the dark November street. And there is something that happens in her chest when she sees it, something she could not precisely name but might describe as something between recognition and relief. That light means the grill is already on. That light means the cook is there. That light means the day is already beginning without her, and she just has to step inside and join it. She pushes through the glass door and the smell hits her the moment it opens. This is the thing about a diner. It has a smell that is entirely its own, unlike anything else in the world, not quite like a restaurant and not quite like a kitchen, and not quite like a coffee shop, but some combination of all three with an additional quality that only comes from years of grease in the walls and steam in the ceiling, and coffee going since before daylight every single morning for as long as anyone can remember. At Mel's, this smell is coffee, bacon fat, the particular burnt edge of the flat-top grill that has been seasoned with 10,000 breakfasts, a faint sweetness from the pie case near the register, and underneath all of it, something harder to name, something almost woody, like old booths and worn formica, and the particular way vinyl holds the warmth of a room. Patty breathes it in. She has walked into this smell every weekday morning for 3 years, and she does not find it unpleasant. She finds it, if she is honest, reassuring. It means the same things it always means. The grill is hot, the coffee is on, the first customers will be here in 40 minutes, and there is work to do. The diner interior is in 1957 exactly what the word diner conjures when you hear it spoken. red vinyl booths along the two side walls and under the big front windows, each one with a small table between the benches, each table holding a chrome napkin holder, a sugar dispenser, a small bottle of ketchup, a small bottle of mustard, and a glass ashtray with the word Mel's printed on the bottom in blue letters. The counter runs down the center of the room from near the door to near the back. 14 stools with red vinyl seats that spin, the chrome bases polished to a high shine by whoever closes at night. Behind the counter, the coffee urns, 2 of them, large and silver and always hissing faintly. The pie case, 3 shelves, glass-fronted. The pass-through window to the kitchen, a slot cut in the wall with a little shelf on each side where plates come out and tickets go in. Above the pass-through, a bell that the cook rings when an order is up. In the far corner, near the last booth by the window, the jukebox. The jukebox at Mel's is a Wurlitzer, a model from 1954, with coloured tubes of light running up the sides, red and blue and yellow, and a curved glass top that lets you see the record mechanism inside. It holds 48 records, 45 RPM, and it costs a nickel a song or 3 songs for a dime. During a slow shift, somebody always eventually feeds it a dime. During the rush, it plays constantly because someone is always putting in another coin while the last song is still going, and the music becomes part of the noise of the room. The way the grill sounds and the coffee sounds and the voices all blend together into something that is not any one sound, but is instead the sound of a diner at work. At 5:14 in the morning, the jukebox is dark and quiet. The cook is already there. His name is Carl, and he has been the morning cook at Mel's for 6 years, which is 3 years longer than Patty and 1 year longer than the other morning waitress, a woman named Gloria who is 31 and has a daughter in 1st grade and a husband who works nights at the rail yard. Carl is a large man with very clean hands, which Patty noticed the first week she worked there and has never stopped noticing. His hands are scrubbed pink every morning, nails cut straight across, no rings. He does not speak much in the early part of the shift. He speaks more as the morning goes on and reaches peak verbosity somewhere around 9:45, when the rush is thinning and the kitchen gets quieter, and he will stand at the pass-through and make quiet observations about the customers, which are sometimes unkind but always accurate. At 5:14, Carl is at the grill. He nods when Patty comes in. She nods back. She goes to the coat room, a small closet near the back, hangs up her coat and her bag, checks her apron bow one more time in the small mirror on the inside of the door, and goes out to begin the setup. The setup at Mel's takes approximately 40 minutes on a normal morning, 35 if you move fast, and cannot be done in less than 30 no matter how fast you move, because there are a certain number of physical steps involved that simply require the time they require. Patty and Gloria divide it without discussing it. They divided it on Patty's 2nd week when they discovered they had a natural agreement about who did what, and they have done it the same way ever since. Patty does the counter, the pie case, and the coffee urns. Gloria does the booths, the menus, and the condiments. The coffee urns first. The urns at Mel's are the bun commercial models, large enough to hold 6 gallons of brewed coffee each, and they need to be cleaned and started fresh every morning. The previous night's grounds have to come out. The baskets have to be rinsed, the water reservoir checked and filled, fresh grounds measured and loaded, and then the brew cycle starts, which takes 12 minutes for the first full urn, which means Patty starts the coffee before she does anything else, because if the coffee is not ready when the first customers arrive, something in the order of the universe has gone wrong and Mr. Hobart will know it and say so. She gets the first urn going by 5:19. While it brews, she does the counter. Each stool needs to be wiped down. The counter surface itself, which is laminate over steel, gets wiped from end to end with a damp cloth, and then a dry cloth for the shine. The chrome on the stool bases gets a brief polish. The napkin holders on the counter get refilled. The sugar caddies get checked and topped up. The pie case gets opened from the back and checked. What is there? Is anything low? Does the lemon meringue that has been there since yesterday afternoon need to come out and be replaced? It does. She moves it to the back kitchen and covers it. A fresh coconut cream went in yesterday, and it is still good, and that one stays. She is doing this, has her back to the door, and is opening the pie case from the kitchen side when Gloria arrives at 5:22. The bell above the door chimes, and Patty calls out good morning over her shoulder without turning around. Gloria's good morning is a particular sound. It is not quite cheerful, but it is not quite not cheerful either. It is a sound that has been calibrated over 31 years of living to be exactly as warm as the person receiving it deserves at 5:22 in the morning. Today, directed at Patty, it is fairly warm. Directed at the coat room, slightly less so. Directed at Carl, who grunts from the kitchen, it is simply acknowledgement, which is the correct register for Carl at this hour. Gloria has blonde hair, a lighter blonde than nature put there but maintained with such consistency that it might as well be natural now. She has a cigarette behind her ear that she will not smoke until her first break at around 8, and she has a coffee thermos of her own, blue where Patty's is green, and she drinks hers standing at the end of the counter while she does her side of the setup. The two women work in comfortable parallel, not talking much, not needing to. The diner fills with the sounds of preparation, the clink of coffee cups being set out, the snap of a fresh cloth, the low steady hiss of the grill, the smell of the first urn finishing and the coffee ready, dark and hot and real, and the particular soft sound of the Formica counter being wiped dry. By 5:50 the setup is done. The door is unlocked at 5:55, 5 minutes before the official opening, because Mr. Hobart's philosophy is, if someone is standing outside in the cold at 5:55, they have earned their coffee. This is the one policy he has that Patty agrees with completely. The first customer of the morning at Mel's on a Tuesday is almost always the same man. His name is Raymond, and Patty does not know his last name. She does not need to. She knows his order, which does not change. Black coffee, 2 eggs scrambled, white toast, dry. She knows that he sits at the second stool from the right end of the counter, that he reads the newspaper he brings with him and does not want to talk until the second cup, that he leaves a 25-cent tip regardless of how many cups he has, and that he has been coming in at 5:55 on weekday mornings since before Patty started here, and will presumably still be doing so after she has moved on to whatever comes next. Raymond comes through the door at 5:56 this morning. There is still a faint surprise on his face, the faint surprise that is the expression of a man who has come in from cold air and found warmth, even though he does this every morning and presumably knows the warmth will be there. He sits at the second stool from the right end. Patty puts a white ceramic mug in front of him, upside down on its saucer, and then rights it and pours his coffee without being asked, because the mug upside down on the saucer is the 1950s diner signal for no coffee please, and the mug right side up is fill it. She fills it. He nods. He unfolds his newspaper. This is the opening of the day, and it is quiet and ordinary and exactly as it should be. Within 20 minutes of opening, the diner begins to fill. Not all at once, not like a flood, but in a particular rhythm that Patty knows by feel. 1 person, then 2 minutes later 2 people, then a small cluster of 3, then someone alone, then 2 booths at once and a man at the counter. By 6:15 all 14 stools are occupied and half the booths are filled, and the bell in the kitchen window is ringing for the first time. The bell is a small chrome dome mounted on a wooden board above the pass-through. Carl rings it by slapping the top with his palm, and it makes a sound like the word ding, and it means order up. Come get it before the plates cool. The sound of that bell is one of the signature sounds of Patty's working life, the way a church bell might be for someone else, or a factory whistle. She does not register it consciously when it rings. She is already moving. This is what the breakfast rush looks like from the inside. You are never standing still. Standing still is not a condition that exists during a rush. You are moving constantly in a particular oval pattern, from the counter to the kitchen window, from the kitchen window to a booth, from the booth to the coffee urn, from the coffee urn to another booth, from that booth to the register, from the register back to the counter. The path changes every 30 seconds based on what is needed where, and you track it all at once the way you might track a conversation happening in 3 places simultaneously. Table 4 needs a refill. The man at stool 7 just got his eggs and will want more coffee in about 2 minutes, which is how long it takes to eat 3 bites and realize the cup is empty. The booth by the window has a woman waiting to order. The kitchen bell just rang, which means the 2 plates of pancakes for stool 11 and 12 are ready. You do all of this, not because you are exceptional, although Patty is in fact a very good waitress, but because this is the job. This is simply what the job requires, and if you cannot do it, you will know within the first week, because the morning rush at a diner is not something you can fake your way through. The customers know. The cook knows. Your feet know. Patty's pad is in her apron pocket, and she pulls it out perhaps 40 times during a rush, writing orders in the abbreviated code she developed during her first month, before anyone taught her there was an official code, and which turned out to be essentially the same code every waitress in every diner has independently invented, because the abbreviations for standard orders arrive at the same conclusions by the same logic. 2 eggs over easy. Bacon wheat toast is 2 OE back WT. Scrambled sausage white toast is skr saw WT. The code is not something she thinks about. It is just the way her hand moves. She puts the tickets in the window. Carl pulls them and reads them and does not look up. His hands are already moving. An order comes into Carl's window and into Carl's kitchen, and within a certain number of minutes, depending on the order, the eggs are on a plate and the toast is standing upright in its rack, and the bacon is arranged parallel, not piled, and the bell rings. Carl does not rush when the bell rings because he rings the bell precisely when the food is ready, and he knows it will be picked up promptly. This is the system, and the system works, and on any given Tuesday morning it has the quality of something choreographed, which it is, except no one choreographed it, and no one is thinking about it as a choreography. It is just people doing their jobs in a space designed for exactly this purpose. The noise level during the breakfast rush at Mel's is something that a person from outside it might describe as loud, but Patty would describe differently because she is inside it and has been inside it for 3 years, and the sound of a diner during a rush is not noise to her, it is information. The particular quality of the conversation at counter stool 3 tells her that the 2 regulars there are having the same argument about baseball they have every 3 weeks. The quieter quality of the booth by the door tells her that the couple there is either tired or unhappy or both. The rising pitch of voices from booth 5 means the table is full of railroad workers who came in together and have not seen each other since last week and are catching up. She does not listen to these conversations as a listener. She receives them the way you receive weather. She knows what each register of sound means, and she responds to what the meaning requires, which is sometimes more coffee, and sometimes just space, and sometimes a quicker order, because the man in the work clothes at stool 9 has 20 minutes before his shift starts and needs to eat. She knows this without being told. She can tell 20 minutes from 45 minutes, by the way a man sits. The food at Mel's in 1957 is American breakfast food in its most honest form. There is nothing tricky about it, and nothing is supposed to be tricky about it. The eggs are real eggs cracked onto the grill one by one. The bacon is thick cut, from a supplier Carl has used for his entire career at Mel's and refuses to change. The toast comes out of a commercial toaster that can handle 4 slices at once, and which makes a sound like a small efficient machine doing its one job well. The pancakes are made from scratch, not from a mix, because Carl does not use a mix for pancakes and never has. And if you told him that a mix was easier, he would give you a look that would rearrange your assumptions. The coffee is the thing people come back for. It is not subtle coffee. It is not the kind of coffee that a person orders with a list of specifications. It is diner coffee, which means it is strong and dark and served extremely hot in a thick white ceramic mug that holds the heat long enough to drink 3/4 of a cup before it goes lukewarm. Patty refills these cups on a system that is more intuition than rule. She pours when she passes, and the cup is less than a third full, and she has learned to carry the pot in her right hand so that the refill can happen in the same motion as walking past, without breaking stride, without interrupting whatever the customer is doing. A good refill at a diner goes unnoticed. That is the measure of it. The coffee simply appears again, hotter, without anyone making a fuss. The regulars at the counter are a specific community, which is not the same as saying they are a community in the conventional sense. They do not necessarily know each other outside these stools, but they know each other here, in the way that people who occupy the same space at the same time for years develop a kind of familiarity that is its own category of relationship. Not friendship exactly, but something neighborly and real. Raymond, the man at the second stool from the right, with his newspaper and his dry toast. Next to him, a man named Frank, who is somewhere in his mid-50s and works somewhere in insurance and orders the same thing as Raymond, except his eggs are fried, not scrambled, and he takes his coffee with cream. Frank is the one who talks. Frank talks to Raymond, who reads his newspaper and responds in monosyllables, and Frank talks to the counter generally and sometimes to Patty when she passes. Small observations about the morning, the weather, the way traffic was already backed up on the avenue at 6:35. Next to Frank is a woman named Dorothy, who is the only regular female counter customer, and who sits there every morning reading a paperback novel propped against the napkin holder and eating oatmeal with a little brown sugar on top. Dorothy works at the telephone exchange 2 blocks away, and her shift starts at 8, which gives her exactly an hour and a half at the counter, which she spends with her oatmeal and her novel with the efficiency of someone who has made peace with how she prefers to spend the limited hours that belong to herself. Patty likes Dorothy. She does not know Dorothy outside this room, but she likes her the way you like the people who are reliable in small ways, who show up when you expect them to show up and sit where they always sit and want what they always want, and who have the particular quality of not being difficult, which in a diner is its own kind of gift. By 7:30, the breakfast rush is at its peak. The jukebox has been going since 6:45, when a young man in a work uniform, a garage mechanic by the look of him, dropped a dime in on his way to a booth and put on 3 songs. The first one was Buddy Holly, then something slower, a crooner, the kind of voice that is smooth as warm butter, and then something faster again, Elvis maybe, or one of the people who sounded like Elvis in 1957, which was a lot of people. The music sits underneath everything else the way a floor sits under furniture, present but not prominent, just enough to fill the gaps between sounds. Patty hums along to things without realizing she is humming. This is something she noticed about herself years ago and has never quite managed to stop. The morning light through the front windows changes as the sun comes up. At 6 there is no sun, only the light from within the diner and the street lights outside. By 6:40 the sky has begun to go grey-blue. By 7 it is lighter, and by 7:25 on this November morning, the sun is low enough that it comes in through the big front windows at an angle, gold and long, and cuts across the counter in a diagonal stripe that moves slowly as the minutes pass. It hits the chrome coffee urn at a particular angle around 7:40 that makes the whole thing look like it is glowing, as if the coffee inside it is producing its own light. Patty passes this particular spot on the counter perhaps 30 times between 7 and 8, and every time the sun is hitting the urn that way she notices it. Not in a way that interrupts anything, just a flicker of something. Something that says, this is a nice detail, even in the middle of all of it. The orders keep coming. 2 sunny side up, sausage patties, white toast, short stack, maple syrup on the side. And number 3, which is the breakfast plate, eggs your way with 2 sides and toast, and which is the most popular item on the menu and which Carl can produce in his sleep, probably literally at this point. An egg white omelette for the woman in booth 7, who specifies this quietly and a little apologetically, the way people in 1957 who want something slightly unusual specify it, as if they are aware that an egg white omelette is asking something of the cook. Carl makes the egg white omelette without comment. A child at the counter, maybe 6 or 7, brought in by his father, who is a regular but does not usually bring the boy. The boy orders a chocolate milkshake at 7:30 in the morning, which his father overrides in favor of orange juice and a pancake. The boy's disappointment is brief and spectacular and then over. He eats the pancake in small, solemn bites. The man at stool 12 is reading a folded back section of the newspaper and eating hash browns that he ordered as a side to nothing, just hash browns, which is unusual but not unprecedented. He is deep in whatever he is reading, and Patty gives him space, which is the right call. She knows which people want contact and which people want to be left to themselves. And stool 12 this morning wants to be left to himself. She fills Raymond's cup for what she estimates is the 5th time. He looks up from his newspaper and says, "Good coffee today," which is something he says about twice a month and which Patty has come to understand as his version of a lengthy expression of appreciation. She says thank you and moves on, because she is always moving on. That is the physical grammar of the job. And there are still 3 hours of breakfast ahead of her. The way tips worked at Mel's is worth understanding, not because the money is the point, but because the money tells you something about the relationship between a waitress and her regulars that nothing else quite captures. A tip in 1957 at a counter diner like Mel's was not expected in the way that tips are expected now. The culture around it was still in formation, still negotiating what was obligation and what was generosity. The standard, if you could call it a standard, was 10%. Some people gave 10%, some people gave nothing, some people gave a nickel regardless of what they spent, some people gave whatever was in their pocket, which was sometimes more and sometimes less than 10%, and did not always correlate obviously with the service. Patty does not remember her first shift's tips exactly, but she remembers that she made $2.40 above her hourly wage, which in 1957 was $1.04 an hour for waitresses, lower than the general minimum wage because the law assumed tips would make up the difference, which was a law written by people who were not waitresses and who therefore had some optimistic assumptions about how that math worked. $2.40 above the wage. She thought that was good. She did not yet know enough to know whether it was good. She knows now. $2.40 on a breakfast shift in 1957 is a decent day, not spectacular, not disappointing. She can do better. She has done better. $14 above wage on a Saturday close to Christmas, which still stands as her personal record, and which she thinks about sometimes with a mixture of pride and the awareness that she will probably never match it again. The tips from her regulars are their own category. Raymond leaves a quarter. Always a quarter. This has not changed in 3 years, and she does not expect it to change. The quarter is his signal. This was satisfactory. This is what I value the transaction at. This is what I will leave tomorrow and the day after. There is a consistency to this that she has come to find, against all logic, reassuring. Frank, the insurance man who talks, leaves 30 cents. He leaves more on the days when she has talked with him, which she does sometimes when the rush allows for it. Not because she finds Frank's conversation particularly riveting, but because Frank is one of those people for whom being listened to is genuinely important. And she can tell this, and responding to what a person actually needs is part of the job. Dorothy, the woman with the novel, leaves 20 cents and a smile that is specific. Not the social smile that people give out of courtesy, but the smile of someone who is glad you were there, and not someone else. That smile is worth more to Patty than the 20 cents, which she would never say aloud, and which is completely true. The lunch crowd is different about tips. The business lunch tables, the men in suits who come in groups from the offices to the north, tip less consistently than the breakfast regulars. Some of them are very good, some of them leave nothing, or pocket change, or the change from an exact bill, as if the decision of whether to leave it or take it is made after arrival and depends on factors she cannot control. She does not think about this resentfully. She thinks about it the way she thinks about weather. It varies, you cannot change it. You work with what comes. There is a woman who comes in every other Tuesday for lunch. Not every Tuesday, just alternating ones, who orders the same thing each time. A turkey club with no mayo, a glass of tomato juice, a coffee, black. She always sits in booth 7, which is the middle booth on the left wall. She is somewhere in her mid-30s, well-dressed in the particular way of women who are professional rather than decorative, meaning her clothes are good quality but not fashionable in a spending money on it way, sensible and careful. She works somewhere close by. Patty gathers but has never asked where. She always has papers with her that she reads while she eats. Work papers, not personal ones. She is efficient about the meal. She does not linger. She tips well. Not extravagantly, but consistently well. 20% on an average check, which in 1957 is noticed. One Tuesday she left, alongside the usual tip, a note on a napkin. The note said, "You always remember my order without writing it down." I appreciate that. Patty kept the napkin for a while, in the coat room behind her name tag hook. She is not sure why. It was the specific detail that made her keep it. The acknowledgement not of the friendliness or the speed, but of the remembering, that she had been seen doing the particular thing she was doing. She threw the napkin away eventually, but she remembered it. The orders that Patty has memorized. For the regulars who come in often enough to have orders rather than preferences, number somewhere in the range of 20 or 25. This is not unusual for a waitress of her experience. What makes it interesting is not the memorization itself, but what it costs. A specific kind of attention, paid consistently over time, that eventually becomes knowledge. You pay enough attention to how someone takes their coffee on enough separate mornings, and it stops being observation and becomes simply knowing. The coffee with cream, no sugar, the eggs always over hard because the yolk has to be fully set, the toast always butter on the side. You stop noting these things, and they are just true, the way your own preferences are true to you. She carries the preferences of about 25 people in her head the way you carry a particular set of facts about your family. Not something you consulted, just something you know. Around 10 o'clock, on days when the rush has cleared early and the room has that good particular quiet, there are sometimes conversations, not between her and the customers usually, not about anything significant, just the ambient conversation of a half-full room at mid-morning. But sometimes a customer at the counter will say something and she will respond, and the exchange will go on for 3 or 4 turns before one of them needs to do something else. These conversations are small. They are not the conversations of people who know each other well. They are the conversations of people who know each other in the particular register of a diner, which is different from knowing someone in the world. She knows things about the people at the counter that she would not know if she passed them on the street, and she does not know things about them that would be obvious from 5 minutes in their homes. Frank, who has been sitting at this counter since before she started, who talks to her every morning and leaves 30 cents, and whom she could pick out of a crowd by the way he holds his coffee cup, has a wife who does not like to travel and a brother who lives in Phoenix, and a car that gives him trouble in cold weather. She knows none of this because Frank told her directly. She knows it because she has heard Frank in conversation with Raymond and Dorothy and the heir generally, across 3 years of counter, and some of what Frank says about himself has accumulated. She could not tell you his wife's name. She could not tell you where he went to high school or what his office looks like or what he worries about at 3 in the morning. These things are outside the diner. Outside the diner, Frank is a person she does not know. This is the boundary of the diner relationship, and it is a genuine boundary, and it is not sad exactly, though it is strange when you think about it directly, which she does not often do. It is simply the shape of this particular kind of knowing, wide in some ways, limited in others, warm within its limits. She accepts the limits. She has to, or she would be somewhere else doing something else, and she is here doing this, which is not a complaint. The uniform, which she irons every Sunday, is one of 3 things she was required to supply herself when she took the job at Mel's. The other 2 were the shoes, which had to be white leather with low heels and a pair of white stockings per shift. Mr. Hobart provides the name tag. He does not provide the dress or the shoes or the stockings. She bought the first dress with her second paycheck. A uniform dress, pale blue, from a shop on the commercial street a few blocks from the diner that specialized in workwear. Nurse uniforms, cafeteria worker uniforms, Waitress uniforms. She had a choice between pale blue, pale pink, pale yellow and white, and she chose pale blue because the other waitresses at Mel's were already in pale blue, which Mr. Hobart preferred for the aesthetic of the room but had not made mandatory, and she did not want to stand out in the wrong direction on her first weeks. She has bought 3 more dresses since then. The first 2 have been repaired past the point of repair and retired. One dress had a burn on the sleeve from a moment near the coffee urn that she still cannot entirely explain. The other split at the hem after 18 months of daily use. The 2 she has now are 2 years old and 1 year old respectively, and both still good, and she expects them to last another year each. The shoes have been the bigger expense. Good white work shoes cost more than the dress, and they wear out faster because the miles are genuinely hard on the leather, even good leather, even with rubber soles. She has bought 2 pairs since starting at Mel's. The current pair is the second, resoled once, and beginning, as she noticed this morning, to develop the faint heel unevenness that precedes a second resoling. She thinks of this as an investment, not in any grand sense, but in the immediate sense. The shoes are the difference between a shift that is merely physically demanding and a shift that is physically painful. She has worked briefly in less good shoes during the 2 weeks between retiring the first pair and getting the second, and she has not forgotten what it cost her feet and therefore her efficiency and therefore everything else. Good shoes. It is not complicated and it is not nothing. The white stockings run. They always run. This is a fact of the 1950s wardrobe that requires no explanation to any woman of the era. The question is not whether they will run, but when, and whether they will run before the end of the shift or after. She keeps a spare pair in her bag, which she started doing after the 3rd time a run appeared at 11 in the morning, and she had to work through lunch in stockings she was aware of. The spare pair in the bag is one of those small practical adaptations that constitutes actual competence. You experienced a problem, you identified the solution, you implemented it. You have not had the problem in the same way since. Not glamorous, not remarkable. Just the quiet architecture of knowing your job. The pie at Mel's is worth talking about separately because the pie is not an afterthought. In a diner like Mel's, the pie case is a statement. It sits at the front of the counter near the register, and it is the first thing a customer sees when they come in, before they see the menu or the specials board or the booth arrangement. The pie case holds, on any given morning, between 4 and 6 varieties, each one on its own plate under a glass dome, and the selection changes according to what Carl has made and what Mr. Hobart has decided to order from the bakery supplier on Tuesdays and Fridays. Carl makes 3 of the pies himself. The apple, because he maintains that no one else makes a proper apple pie, and he has never been shown evidence to the contrary. The coconut cream, which is his specialty, and which has a following among the regulars that he does not acknowledge but clearly knows about, because he makes it slightly more often than rotation would require, and a seasonal fruit pie that changes with what is available and what costs a reasonable amount, which in November is primarily apple and sometimes a spiced pear that he started making 2 years ago, and which Patty considers her personal favourite, though she has never said so to Carl. The remaining pies, usually lemon meringue and cherry and occasionally pecan, come from a bakery supplier whose truck arrives early Tuesday and Friday mornings. They are good. They are not as good as Carl's pies. Everyone at Mel's knows this, including Mr. Hobart, and nobody says it. Patty sells a significant amount of pie in the course of a shift. Not only at lunch, which you might expect, but throughout the morning, because people at a diner counter in the 1950s have a different relationship to dessert at breakfast than would seem conventional now. A piece of pie with your morning coffee was not remarkable. It was an acceptable thing that a reasonable person might do on a Tuesday, and several regulars at Mel's do exactly this. She has sold pie at 6:30 in the morning to a man in a work uniform who said, "I've been thinking about that coconut cream since yesterday, and who ate it in 4 efficient bites and left 30 cents for a 40-cent slice, which was not mathematically impressive. But the expression on his face when the first bite arrived said something that made the math beside the point. There is a detail about the coffee pot that she wants to tell you, which is this: it is heavier than it looks. The commercial coffee pot at Mel's, when full, holds approximately 1 gallon of coffee, which weighs approximately 8 1/3 pounds. She carries this pot, or a pot like it, continuously for approximately 8 hours per shift, in her right hand, setting it down on the counter when she needs both hands for something, and picking it up again immediately after. Over the course of a shift, she picks up and sets down a coffee pot, loaded or partially loaded, somewhere between 100 and 150 times. 150 times 8 pounds. The strength this requires has built itself into her right forearm and shoulder over 3 years in a way that she is aware of in the mirror, but which she does not think of as exercise, because it is not exercise. It is the residue of the work, the physical record of the miles and the pot and the plates and the trays. Her right forearm is noticeably stronger than her left. She has been told this by the woman at the laundry on 4th Street who noticed it last spring when Patty was having something altered. The woman said it the way you say something interesting rather than something wrong, and Patty said, "Yes, I know," and that was the end of it. She thinks of it as the signature of the job, written on her body the way every job writes itself somewhere, eventually. Midway through the lunch rush, there is a moment that Patty thinks of, privately and without flourish, as the hinge. The hinge is when the rush peaks and she can feel, not in any identifiable sensation, but in some registering that happens below conscious thought, that the next thing is the beginning of the unwinding. She is still in the middle of it, still moving as fast as she was moving, still carrying the same plates and the same pot and taking the same orders, but something in the quality of it shifts, almost imperceptibly, from getting busier to beginning to be done. It is not wishful thinking. It is not fatigue making her assume the end is near. It is accurate. She has been right about the hinge when she looks back at it, almost every time she has felt it. Somewhere between 12:20 and 12:40 on a normal lunch shift, she feels the hinge, and somewhere between 12:40 and 1:15, the room begins to thin. She does not know how she knows. She just does. This is what 3 years of paying attention to the same room produces. A knowledge of its patterns that is so internalized that it no longer requires observation. The room tells her things without telling her things. She just has to be inside it, paying attention, in the particular way she has learned to pay attention. This seems to me like a kind of knowledge worth noticing, not intelligence in the way that word is usually deployed, but something careful and earned and genuinely useful, the knowledge of a specific place, accumulated through daily presence over time, until the place and the person are no longer quite separate. She knows this diner the way you know the house you grew up in, not because she grew up in it, but because she has spent enough of her waking hours here that it has organized itself into something like memory. The smell of the coffee in the morning, the sound of the bell over the door, the particular squeak that booth 5 makes when you slide across the vinyl quickly, the way the afternoon light comes through the far left window at an angle that creates a stripe on the floor between 1:40 and 2 o'clock that is slightly different from any other stripe of light in the room. The way Carl's voice changes when he is getting close to the end of his prep and ready to move into the dinner gear. Quieter, more internally organized, a different quality of silence from the kitchen. These are the textures of the place as she knows it. They are not in any book. They will not survive in any record. They exist inside her, and when she eventually leaves this room for the last time, they will go with her. But that is not today. Today she is here, and the lunch rush is at its hinge, and there are still 40 minutes of real work before the afternoon opens up, and she is exactly where she is supposed to be, moving along the 51 feet of counter with the coffee pot in her right hand. The jukebox in the far corner is playing something she cannot quite identify from here. Not Buddy Holly. Something slower, a woman's voice, she thinks. or possibly a man with a high voice, the words unclear across the noise of the room. She hears the shape of it without hearing the content. That is fine, that is exactly right. She does not need to hear the words. The afternoon, when it finally arrives fully, has a different quality of quiet from the morning. The morning quiet at Mel's is preparatory, coiled, the room gathering itself before the day opens. The afternoon quiet, between the end of lunch and the beginning of the dinner shift she will not see, is something else. It is the quiet of a room that has done its main work and is resting in the accomplishment of it, if that does not sound too dramatic, which it might. But here is the thing. When the diner is in that afternoon lull, when the rush customers are gone and the few remaining people are the ones with nowhere pressing to be, the room has a quality that it does not have at any other hour. The light is not the morning light, and it is not the evening light. The activity is not the morning urgency, and it is not the dinner anticipation. It is a room at rest briefly between demands, and the people in it are at rest in the same way. The woman with her magazine, the man with his pie, the couple sharing a slice of coconut cream without urgency. There is something genuinely beautiful about a diner in the afternoon lull. Not beautiful in a way that photographs easily, beautiful in the way that any lived space is beautiful when the living in it is visible but not urgent. The worn formica with its particular pattern of small scratches accumulated over years of plates and cups, and the natural wear of a surface that has been used the way surfaces are meant to be used. The red vinyl of the booths with its creases where thousands of people have sat and slid and leaned. The chrome of the stool bases, polished and polished again, wearing a certain softness into the shine. The pie case with its one remaining slice of coconut cream, illuminated by the little light inside, waiting for whoever wants it. All of it used, all of it present, all of it exactly as it should be. She will miss this room when she is not here, on her days off, on Sundays when Mel's is closed. She has never said this to anyone. It is a fact about herself that she holds without much comment, not with sentimentality, just with recognition. She misses the room the way you miss any familiar place when you are not in it, quietly and without urgency. It will be there tomorrow. It is always there. What she carries home with her every day is not just the tiredness, though the tiredness is real and extensive. She carries home small things, fragments of overheard conversation, the image of the child eating the pancake in solemn bites, the specific quality of Raymond's gratitude, expressed in quarters, Dorothy finishing her chapter before she drinks the last of her coffee, in that particular order, the woman on the alternating Tuesdays, the note on the napkin about remembering the order. None of these things belong to Patty in any formal sense. They happened in front of her. She witnessed them and then moved on to the next thing. But they stay somewhere in the accumulation of her days, and over 3 years the accumulation has become a kind of wealth. Not in the monetary sense, but in the sense that she is richer for having witnessed it, for having been in that room, paying attention. I think about this often when I think about the women who did this work. What they saw in the course of their shifts was ordinary life at its most unguarded. People at breakfast have not fully assembled themselves yet. They are still partly in whatever they woke up from, still wearing the night on their faces, still in the first hour of having to be themselves in public. The couple who are clearly having a difficult time but are sitting across from each other eating toast because that is what you do. The man who always sits at the same stool, who never speaks to anyone, and yet who comes back every morning, which means the diner gives him something, and she does not need to know what it is to make sure it is there. The child who wanted a chocolate milkshake, the older man who ate the soup and the pie slowly and said "see you to the room" when he left. She was the witness to all of this. She carried the pot and poured the coffee and cleared the plates, and in doing so she was present for an hour of the day, sometimes more, for hundreds of people across 3 years of shifts. That is not nothing. That is in its way enormous. Even if nobody wrote it down, even if no record survives, even if the only place it exists now is in the memory of the people who were there, And in a story like this one, which is the nearest thing to a record that the ordinary days of ordinary people usually get, the soup is almost gone. She is scraping the last of it from the bowl with the back of the spoon, the particular small ceremony of finishing something good. And the apartment is warm now, finally properly warm, the radiator having made its full contribution, and the window holds the dark of the November evening, and the street below is quiet. She sets the bowl in the sink. She does not wash it tonight. She will wash it in the morning. Before she leaves, one of those small adjustments in the rhythms of a life lived around a shift schedule, the things you do and don't do in a particular order based on the time of arrival and departure, and the energy available. She sits back in the chair. Outside a sound. Not much of one. Something on the street, a door. Someone's heels on the sidewalk below. Quick and purposeful, fading into the distance. Then nothing again. She thinks about Tuesday, about the fact that she will do it again in 8 hours. The alarm at 4:45. The 16 pin curls. The lipstick. The uniform. The shoes. The walk in the cold. The yellow light at the end of the block. The smell of the diner coming in through the door. Raymond at the second stool from the right. Dorothy with her novel. Frank, who will tell her something about the morning traffic on the avenue. She is not anxious about this. She is not looking forward to it in a particular way either. It is simply what comes next, the way Tuesday always comes next after Monday, the way morning always comes next after night. The way the coffee is always ready before the first customer if you start it early enough. She closes her eyes. The apartment settles around her. The small sounds of a building at night. The radiator, the occasional tick of the pipes contracting. Someone in another apartment moving through their own evening routine. A door somewhere closing softly. She is 24 years old. She is tired in every part of herself that can be tired. And it is a clean tiredness, earned, the tiredness of a body that has been used well and will recover by morning. The day is done. Tomorrow is coming. Both of these things are true at the same time, and they are both fine. And she is already drifting. The diner at Mel's closes at 9 o'clock on weeknights. By the time the last customer leaves and Lorraine and Beverly have finished the close, it is usually close to 10. They wipe the counter down its full length one last time, the same counter Patty wiped this morning at 5:30, 51 feet of laminate and chrome. They refill the napkin holders and the sugar caddies and the condiment bottles. They set up the coffee urn for the morning, the grounds in, the water in, everything ready so that whoever comes in first, and it will be Patty, it is always Patty, she has the earliest start of anyone who works here. Only needs to flip the switch. She does not know this is being done for her. She is asleep. Jimmy finishes his kitchen work and locks the back door and goes. Carl has been gone since 3. Mr. Hobart does his last walk of the floor, hands in pockets, looking at what is there and what is not, the same survey he does every morning, reversed. Not checking that the room is ready to begin, but checking that it is ready to rest. He turns off the overhead lights. The jukebox goes dark. The coloured tubes of light, red and blue and yellow, that run up the sides of the Wurlitzer and make it glow, go out. The pie case light stays on, by habit or oversight, a faint illumination inside the glass case, falling on the empty plates where the pies were today and will be again tomorrow. Mr. Hobart turns off the last light and goes out the front door and locks it. From the outside, in the dark of the November street, the diner is a shape. A corner lot, brick, glass-fronted, the sign reading Mel's in its particular lettering, the letters dark now, the window dark, the only light, the street light on the corner casting a pale pool on the sidewalk in front of the locked door. It does not look like much, from out here in the dark. From inside, in the morning it will look like everything. At 4:45 the alarm will ring, and Patty will wake, and count to 4, and get up and begin. This is Tuesday in 1957. This is what it was. The thing that surprises people when they think about what waitressing looked like in the 1950s, and I mean really think about it rather than thinking about the cheerful movie version of it, is that a significant portion of the job takes place in the head, not in a philosophical sense, in a logistical sense. At any given moment during a breakfast rush, Patty is holding in her working memory which tables have ordered and are waiting, which tables have received food and may need refills or condiments, which tables are finished and should be cleared, which tickets are in the window waiting to come out, how long ago each order went in, whether the couple in booth 2 is on a schedule or has time to sit, whether the group in booth 5 needs another round of coffee or is winding down, and approximately how full each coffee urn is, because an empty urn during a morning rush is the diner equivalent of a small emergency, and it is her job to start the next brew before the current one runs out. She holds all of this simultaneously and acts on it in priority order, and the priority order shifts every 30 seconds based on what is happening where. A customer at stall 4 has been staring at his empty cup for approximately 45 seconds longer than is comfortable. She is across the room with a coffee pot before he has a chance to look around for her. She sets it down in front of him, and she says something, or she does not say anything, depending on whether he looks like the kind of man who wants to be spoken to, or the kind of man who just wants his cup filled, and she can tell which one he is before she reaches him. This is the skill that nobody talks about when they talk about waitressing, the reading of people. Not in any mystical sense, nothing like that, just the accumulated knowledge of watching hundreds of people in the same situation, in the same room, doing the same things, until the patterns become legible. The way someone holds their coffee cup tells you something. Whether they are looking at the menu or already know what they want tells you something. Whether they look up when you approach or keep looking at the table tells you something. Whether their movements are slow and morning slow or quick and running late tells you something. And you put all of these somethings together and you get a person, or enough of a person to serve well, which in the context of this room and this job is what matters. Patty is good at this. She was probably always going to be good at it because she has the specific quality of genuine attention, the ability to actually see what is in front of her rather than seeing through it, which is rarer than it sounds. But she got better at it here. She got better at it one customer at a time, one shift at a time, over 3 years of standing in this room and watching. Around 8:15 she has a moment, not a long moment, 30 seconds maybe, when the rush finds an unexpected gap. All the orders have gone in and the plates are not up yet and nobody needs anything right this second. And she is standing near the coffee urns and she looks down the length of the counter. The counter is full, every stool occupied. People eating and reading and talking and not talking and staring into their coffee. The light is good now, that full morning light that has come up gradually while everyone was eating and has now settled into a clear pale gold that falls through the windows at a gentler angle than the early diagonal stripe and softens everything slightly. The smell of bacon and coffee and warm toast hangs in the room like it lives there, which in a sense it does. She looks at this for 30 seconds, then the bell rings and she is moving again. Gloria is at the other end of the counter, refilling a cup, and she and Patty pass each other in the narrow space behind the counter perhaps 30 times each shift, which means 60 moments of proximity, and they have worked out the choreography of this without any discussion. Whoever has the coffee pot goes slightly to the right, whoever is carrying plates goes slightly to the left, and the pass is made cleanly, no collision, no hesitation. They have never talked about this arrangement, it simply exists. There is one other detail about working the counter at Mel's that is worth knowing, and it is this. The counter at Mel's is 51 feet long. Patty knows this because she measured it once, for no particular reason, with the tape measure from the coat room that Mr. Hobart keeps there for reasons never fully explained. 51 feet end to end, and she walks that length, or some fraction of it, probably somewhere between 200 and 250 times per shift, not counting the booth sections, not counting the trips to the kitchen window, 12 to 15 miles. Back to the fact that started all of this, she does not think about it in miles. She thinks about it in tables. At 8:45, the rush begins to ease. Not all at once, not like a tide going out, but the way a crowded room empties, a few people at a time, until suddenly you realize you can see the far wall again. 3 stools empty in quick succession, a booth clears, the counter breathing a little. Raymond finishes his last cup and leaves his quarter on the saucer and folds his newspaper under his arm and goes, as he always does, at almost exactly the same time every morning, without announcing that he is leaving, just going. Dorothy finishes her oatmeal and her chapter, places her bookmark carefully, closes the novel, finishes her coffee and leaves 2 dimes beside her bowl. She says, "See you tomorrow, Patty," without looking up from gathering her things, and Patty says, "See you tomorrow, Dorothy," and means it, because tomorrow Dorothy will in fact be there, and so will Patty. And this is a reliable thing in a world that is not always reliable about reliability. By 9, Mel's is at about half capacity. The post-rush crowd is a different energy from the rush crowd. Slower, more settled. People who have nowhere pressing to be or who came late deliberately. A woman with a toddler, the toddler in a high chair pushed up to the booth, spreading jam on toast with such concentration that you would think it was a profession. An older couple, possibly retired, sharing a newspaper section each, not talking. The particular quiet of 2 people who have talked about everything already. A man with a briefcase who came in late and is eating fast and reading papers and will leave fast. Patty clears and resets with one hand and works the remaining customers with the other, not literally but functionally. The clearing and resetting is physical work that she does while also doing everything else, because standing still and only clearing is a luxury of slower shifts, and this is not yet a slow shift. The clearing is a specific skill set of its own. The stacking of dishes in a way that is stable and efficient, the gathering of silverware without the clatter that would interrupt conversations, the quick wipe of the table or counter section immediately after so that the next person sits down to something clean, the replacement of the ashtray if it needs it, the sugar caddy if it is low, the napkin holder if it is empty, all of this in one pass if possible, 2 passes if necessary. Never 3. It is 9:22 when Mr. Hobart comes out of his small office in the back, which he does every morning at approximately this time, to walk the floor and see how things are. He is a compact man, always in a white dress shirt even at 9 in the morning, with a habit of putting both hands in his trouser pockets when he surveys the room, so that he looks simultaneously managerial and oddly relaxed. He walks the booths first, a slow circuit, looking at tables, looking at customers, looking at things Patty cannot always identify but which seem to satisfy him most mornings. Then he comes to the counter and stands at the end nearest the kitchen and looks down the length of it. He does not find fault this morning. This is the best outcome. When Mr. Hobart finds fault, he does not shout, which would almost be easier. He says in a very even voice the specific thing that is wrong and waits for acknowledgement, and then returns to his office. The evenness is more uncomfortable than shouting would be, but there is nothing to be even about this morning. The counter is clean, the coffee is fresh, the customers look attended to. He says good morning to the room, which is his version of a compliment, and goes back to his office. Patty exhales very slightly. By 9:45, what remains of the morning crowd is thin enough that she and Gloria move into what could loosely be called maintenance mode, which is the work of the diner between rushes, the slower labour of the quiet hours that is less visible than the rush but equally necessary. Cleaning that needs doing before lunch, restocking, checking the pie case, making sure the condiments are full and the napkin holders are filled and the counter is clean down its entire length. Carl in the kitchen can be heard singing something quietly, which always starts around this time. He does not sing during the rush. He does not sing before 9:30, but somewhere around 9:45, when the pressure drops, he sings, and it is always something Patty half recognizes and can never quite place. Something that might be a hymn, or might be something from the radio, or might be something entirely from Carl's own private musical library. The singing is its own kind of signal. The rush is over. The kitchen is settling. The morning has passed the hardest part. Gloria takes her break at 9:50. She goes to the back and lights her cigarette and stands in the narrow alley behind the kitchen door, where there is a wooden crate that has been there since before Patty's time and functions as a bench. Patty will take her break at 10:15. Their breaks are staggered and always have been. One person always on the floor. At 10 minutes to 10, Patty has the counter almost entirely to herself. Dorothy is gone. Raymond is gone. The briefcase man is gone. Stall 12 is still occupied by a man who came in late and ordered a piece of apple pie, just pie, no coffee, which is unusual, and who has been sitting there eating the pie in very slow, deliberate bites as though he has a great deal to think about and has decided that this is the place where he will think about it. She refills his water glass once. He nods. She leaves him to his thinking. The diner at 10 in the morning has a quality that it does not have at any other hour. The rush is done, but the lunch setup has not started yet, and the room is in a kind of held breath between the two great efforts of the day. The light is clear and settled now, no longer the drama of the early morning or the long gold stripes, just clear November light falling evenly through the windows. The jukebox is quiet. Carl has stopped singing. The coffee urns hiss softly. The toddler and her mother are still in their booth, the toddler asleep now, small head tilted against the back of the seat, piece of toast still in one hand. Patty wipes the counter for perhaps the 15th time this morning. The cloth moves from one end to the other in long, slow passes, and she is not thinking about the counter specifically. She is thinking, if she is thinking about anything in particular, about whether the left heel of her right shoe is starting to go, because she has been feeling something slightly off in it all morning, a faint unevenness in the contact with the floor, that might just be how she is standing or might mean the heel is beginning to compress unevenly. She rotates her right foot slightly. Hard to tell. She thinks she will check the heel when she sits down at break. This is what the in-between hours are made of. The small domestic concerns of the body, which have been set aside during the rush and reassert themselves gently when the work eases. The heel, a faint ache across the shoulder blades from carrying plates. The beginning of hunger, not urgent yet because she ate at 5 in the morning and it is not yet 10, but there, reminding her. She eats at Mel's always, whatever she is going to eat. This is one of the very few unambiguous perquisites of the job. 1 meal per shift. From the menu, no charge. Patty usually eats around 10:30 after her break, before the lunch prep begins. She eats something different almost every day, a small deliberate variety in an otherwise quite repetitive routine, and she considers what she is going to eat during the quiet of the in-between hours the way another person might consider what they are going to read. Today she is thinking about soup. The kitchen makes a soup every day, whatever Carl decides, and today it is vegetable beef, which she could smell from the moment the stock came up around 7, and has been thinking about, not urgently, since around 8:30. She goes to the back at 10:15 when Gloria returns from break. The alley behind the kitchen door is cold, but she is used to this. She does not smoke, unlike Gloria, so the 5 minutes she spends out here are purely a change of environment, a brief interruption in the long stream of the same indoor air, which after 4 hours of a breakfast rush is thick with coffee and grease and the accumulated warmth of a crowded room. The cold outside air is a reset of sorts. She stands on the wooden crate because it lifts her off the cold concrete, pulls her cardigan tighter, and looks at the brick wall opposite for 5 minutes without thinking about very much. This is, she will tell you, the best part of the break. Not the sitting, though sitting is good. Not the air, though the air is useful. The not thinking. The 5 minutes of conscious blankness that the cold and the quiet of the alley allow, which she has come to understand are as necessary to the shift as the coffee and the food and the heel of her shoe being intact. She goes back in at 10:21. She eats the vegetable beef soup at 10:30, at a small table in the back near the coat room, with a piece of bread from the kitchen basket, and she eats it in approximately 7 minutes, which is not rushed but is not leisurely, because this is what eating at work is. Fuel, efficiently administered, with enough deliberateness to count as a meal, and not just a refueling stop. The soup is good. Carl's soups are always good. She does not tell him this because he does not need to be told. And because in the particular ecosystem of this kitchen, the soup being good goes without saying the same way the sun being up in the morning goes without saying. But she thinks it. That is something, probably. The lunch prep begins at 11. What the lunch prep means concretely is the following: the specials board, the condiment check on the booths, the side work of laying out the afternoon service, extra napkins, extra silverware rolled in their paper napkins and stacked near the counter, the soup set up for service, the dessert case rechecked, and the mentally shifting of gears, which is real even though it is not visible, from the breakfast mode that has been running since 5:30 this morning to the lunch mode, which is slightly different. The lunch crowd is different from the breakfast crowd, not unrecognizably different. A lot of the same bodies, different faces, different moods, but lunch brings in people who are on a break from work rather than on their way to it, which means they are 30 minutes into freedom rather than girding themselves for the day ahead, and this changes the quality of the tables in ways that are subtle but real. Breakfast is purposeful, lunch can be social. Breakfast orders tend to be faster. Lunch orders sometimes include discussion. She writes the specials on the board with white chalk in her handwriting, which has become the specials board handwriting over time, which means it is clear and slightly larger than her natural hand, and she makes the letters even across the top line and has learnt to estimate the spacing before she starts writing, so she does not run out of room. Today's special is the open-faced hot roast beef sandwich with mashed potatoes and gravy. Mr. Hobart decided this at 9 o'clock. Patty wrote the ingredients on her order pad during his brief announcement of it and has been thinking about the spacing on the board since then. She gets the spacing right. The letters are level and the price, 85 cents, has its own line at the end. Carl from the kitchen says, "Nice." This is the most praise Carl gives. She knows this and accepts it accordingly. At 11:30, the first lunch customers begin to arrive. In November, in this neighborhood, they come from the office buildings on the 2 blocks to the north, which means clerks and secretaries and junior salesmen in their suits, and from the small shops along the avenue, which means people in work clothes or aprons, or the particular wrinkle pattern of people who have been on their feet since 8. The corner drugstore sends its lunch counter overflow to Mel's when their own counter is full, which is often, and these are people who come already knowing what they want and want it quickly. The lunch rush is not identical to the breakfast rush. Nothing is identical to anything else in the way you assume it will be when you have only seen one version of it. But the broad strokes are the same. Movement, information holding, the oval path between kitchen and tables, the bell, the plates, the coffee pot, the people who need attending and the people who want to be left alone, and the skill of telling them apart. The hot roast beef sandwich sells well. 43 of them by the end of service. She will count the tickets later and tell Gloria, and Gloria will say, "Of course it did." That's what gravy does. The lunch rush peaks between 12 and 12:45. There is a moment, somewhere around 12:20, when every table in the diner is occupied and there are 2 people standing by the door, which does not happen often, and which Patty handles by seating the standing people in the 2 booths nearest the door that are almost clear and asking the finishing parties if they are ready for the check, which they are, and which takes about 4 minutes total. 4 minutes during which she is doing 6 other things simultaneously. This is a long time to describe 4 minutes. But 4 minutes in the middle of a lunch rush contain enough movement and decision-making and physical work that they take longer to describe than they took to live, which is often how it works with the best kind of work. It is faster than the accounting of it. The early lunch crowd thins after 12:45, and by 1:15 the diner is in the comfortable middle density of the early afternoon. Not full, not empty. A pleasant number of people scattered in the booths and at the counter, the noise level down to something more like conversation and less like a sports event. The light through the windows has shifted again, the sun higher now, the quality of it less warm and more simply present, doing its November job without the drama of morning. Gloria at the far end of the counter is laughing at something the man on stool 3 said, and the laugh is genuine, Patty can tell, because Gloria's fake laugh has a slightly different register. She uses the genuine laugh when she actually finds something funny, and the other one when she is being professionally pleasant, which is also a kind of skill and also part of the job, though a different kind of skill and a different kind of part. Patty refills the coffee at table 6, a two-top. A man and a woman who came in together but have been sitting in silence since they arrived, which is either comfortable silence or uncomfortable silence, and she cannot quite tell which. They are both drinking coffee and neither of them is looking at a menu because neither of them ordered food, which is allowed and not particularly unusual at 1:15 on a Tuesday when the rush is over. She fills both cups without being asked and says nothing because they look like people who do not need anything said. She moves on. There are things about Gloria that Patty knows and things she does not, and the line between the two is the same line that runs through all her diner friendships. It falls at the door. What she knows. Gloria's daughter is named Carol and is in first grade at the elementary school 2 miles east. Gloria's husband works nights at the rail yard, which means Gloria works mornings so that one of them is always home. A deliberate arrangement, the kind of practical architecture that working families build quietly around their children without announcing it. Gloria buys a different brand of cigarettes depending on what is on sale that week, which she mentioned once and which Patty has since confirmed by observation. Gloria has a laugh that starts slightly before she expects it to, a fact that makes the laugh always sound a little surprised, even when she is not. What she does not know, what Gloria's apartment looks like, or whether she is happy in her marriage, or what she was like before she had Carol and before she had the husband and before she had the job at Mel's, the version of Gloria that existed at 21, say, or 18. She has worked beside Gloria for 3 years on a morning shift that begins before 5:30, and she does not know these things, and this is not a failure of their relationship. It is simply the shape of it. The closest thing they have to a personal conversation on a regular basis happens in the brief parallel of the setup, when the diner is empty and the work is not yet urgent, and the space allows for sentences that are longer than "Table 4 needs a refill" and "I'll get it." On the Tuesday in November we are spending with Patty. The conversation during setup is about Carol's school play, in which Carol has been given the part of a tree, and Gloria's feelings about this are complicated. She wanted Carol to have a speaking part, but she also understands that Carol is shy, and a tree requires nothing of Carol except standing with her arms raised in a specific way, which Carol can do without difficulty. Patty says, "A tree is a good part for a shy kid." Gloria says, "I suppose it is." There is a pause in which both women continue their setup tasks, and then Gloria says, "She asked me if trees have names," which is exactly the kind of question Carol asks. Patty, who is loading the pie case, considers this. She says, "What did you tell her?" Gloria says, "I told her that this tree's name was Carol." Patty does not say anything to this, but she is smiling when she turns back to the counter, and Gloria, though she cannot see this, knows she is. This is the conversation. It ends there, or some version of it ends there, because the setup work requires attention and the door will open soon and the day will begin in its full version, and the small human exchanges of the setup hour will be absorbed into the more immediate requirements of the rush. But the conversation happened. It happens most mornings. Some small fragment of the life outside the diner, offered without ceremony, received without ceremony, and this is sufficient. The relationship between a waitress and her cook is not a friendship, not exactly, but it is a working relationship of such interdependence that it has characteristics of friendship without quite being that. What Patty and Carl have is a particular kind of trust. She trusts that what he puts on the plate is correct, and he trusts that she will get it to the table correctly. And between these two trusts, the whole enterprise of the breakfast shift is conducted. They do not discuss this trust. It exists in the quality of how they work, not in any conversation about it. Carl has opinions about waitresses. He has expressed these opinions over the years to Patty indirectly, not addressing her but speaking generally in the way that people in kitchens speak generally, which is to the air and to whoever is there. and not to anyone in particular. His opinion on waitresses is that there are two kinds: the kind that carries the information to and from the customer accurately, so that what the customer orders is what he makes, and what he makes is what the customer receives, and the kind that introduces errors into this chain for reasons he considers inexcusable: bad tickets, illegible or incomplete, picking up the wrong plate, telling the customer the wrong thing about the menu, losing tickets entirely. Patty is the first kind. She has been the first kind since her second week, when the first week's errors worked themselves out. Carl has never said this directly. He communicates it in the particular quality of his attention when she is at the window, which is efficient and without complication, the quality of a man who does not expect problems and is therefore pleasantly unsurprised when none arrive. She values this. She values it the way you value a reliable colleague, someone whose reliability you could take for granted but don't, because you know what unreliability looks like and what it costs. At 8:52 on this particular Tuesday, Carl says something to Patty through the window that he has never said before in 3 years of working together. He says, "Apple pie tomorrow." She says, "Carl's apple?" He says, "Carl's apple." This is, in the language of the kitchen at Mel's, significant news. Carl's apple pie, as opposed to the bakery supplier's apple pie, is a thing that happens approximately 8 times a year at irregular intervals determined entirely by Carl, and which is anticipated by the regulars to a degree that is slightly disproportionate to its being a pie, but which Patty has decided is not actually disproportionate at all, because it is very good. She carries this information, apple pie tomorrow, through the last hour of the rush, and delivers it to Dorothy, who is on her second cup of tea in her 4th chapter, sometime around 9:15, and Dorothy looks up from the novel with an expression that Patty has learned to read as genuine pleasure, not quite contained by the usual reserve. Dorothy says, "What kind?" Patty says, "Apple." Dorothy says, "I'll come in before 9." Dorothy always says this, and Dorothy always comes in at the same time she always comes in, which is around 7:15, which is before 9. Patty does not say this. She says, "I'll make sure there's a piece saved." She will not actually save a piece in any formal sense, because that is not how the pie case works, but she will track the remaining slices after 7:30 and make sure that Dorothy's usual request, a slice of pie with her oatmeal, goes in before the regular lunch rush starts taking them. This is technically an irregular use of her position. She does not do it for everyone. She does it for Dorothy. She could not explain precisely why, except to say that Dorothy comes every morning with her book, and eats her oatmeal, and reads her chapters, and leaves her 20 cents, and does not ask for anything extra, and the pie is her one visible pleasure in this room, and making sure she gets a piece of the good one costs Patty nothing. She has thought occasionally about whether Mr. Hobart would consider this a problem. She has decided he would not, because it does not affect the revenue, and because it does not affect anything except that a regular customer gets her preferred pie, which is not a complicated moral question. The question she finds more interesting when she thinks about it is what she is doing when she does this. Reserving a slice of pie for Dorothy, knowing Frank's coffee, recognizing Raymond's particular version of gratitude. These are small acts, small persistent attentions, performed without announcement for their own sake, because something in her wants the room to be the way it should be for the people who are in it. She has no name for this impulse. She does not need one. The physical geography of the neighborhood around Mel's is part of the diner's life in a way that a person working inside does not always notice, because inside is where the work is, and outside is the context that delivers the work and then recedes. But on her walk in and on her walk home she sees it all, twice daily, in its different light. The corner lot that Mel's occupies is at the intersection of 2 streets, the commercial avenue which runs north-south and has the office buildings and the pharmacy and the shoe repair and the dry cleaners where she lives, and a cross street that runs east-west into a residential neighborhood of small houses and 2 family buildings, the kind of neighborhood where people are neither poor nor comfortable but are managing, which describes most of what surrounds the diner and most of the people who eat in it. To the north, the office buildings start 2 blocks up, 5 and 6 stories of brick and glass with their own internal rhythms. 9 to 5, the lunch hour, the coffee at break pattern that produces the diner's 10 o'clock lull and then sends people in at noon. To the south, the neighbourhood extends past Mel's into something quieter. Fewer shops, more fronts of residences, the kinds of streets where you hear someone's radio through an open window in summer and in November hear nothing but footsteps and the occasional car. The diner is on the boundary between the commercial and the residential, which is part of what makes it work. The office workers come from the north, the neighbourhood comes from the south, and Mel's serves both with a menu and an atmosphere designed to make neither feel out of place. This is, she thinks, the art of a diner, not the food, or not only the food, the atmosphere, which is not decorated or designed in any conscious way but which has developed, over years of the same room being used by the same community of people, into something that is itself, not a restaurant which implies occasion, not a cafeteria which implies function without pleasure, not a lunch counter which implies haste, a diner which implies something between home and public, a room where you can be yourself without performance but where someone will bring you what you need. She has thought about this more than you might expect, in the quiet moments between the rushes, about what the diner is and why it works and what it would mean if it weren't here. She does not arrive at conclusions exactly. She just sits with the question, on slow mornings, and finds that she likes it as a question. The lunch crowd on this November Tuesday includes, at various points in the 2-hour rush, the following: 14 men from the office buildings, most in groups of 2 or 3, most ordering the hot roast beef sandwich or the daily soup or both, most in a 25-minute window between 12 and 12:25, a woman from the pharmacy who always eats alone at stool 1, who orders a grilled cheese and a cup of tomato soup, and who leaves the appropriate amount and nothing more, not out of anything like stinginess, but out of the mathematical precision of a person who has given thought to what is owed and has arrived at an answer and is comfortable with it. A group of 4 women who work at the insurance office on the 4th floor of the building on the corner, who take a booth and who order from all over the menu, and who talk with the particular energy of 4 people who have been in close professional proximity all morning, and have a great deal to say to each other about it. 2 teenage boys who come in at 12:45 after the main rush, who sit at the counter with the slightly theatrical casualness of adolescents in a room full of adults, who order hamburgers and Coca-Colas and who tip nothing but who also do not require very much. She does not resent the teenagers who do not tip. They are teenagers. She was a teenager once, not very long ago, and she did not know things then that she knows now, and this is simply how it goes. The hamburger is not on the breakfast menu. It comes on at 11 when the kitchen shifts to the lunch board, and it is Carl's hamburger, which means it is not a casual thing. The patties are made fresh each morning, never frozen, from ground beef that arrives 3 times a week from the same supplier as the bacon. The bun is toasted on the grill. The burger comes with a dill pickle and a small mound of Carl's hand-cut fries on the side, and the fries are, in Patty's considered view and the view of most people who have eaten them, extremely good. The teenagers eat them with the efficient indifference of people for whom the pleasure of good food is still partly below the level of conscious appreciation. They eat and they talk and they don't tip and they leave, and the stools are ready for the next person. By 12:50 the main crush is over and the lunch crowd is in its tail end. The people who came late or who are still on the earlier plates. The roast beef special is almost gone. 3 portions left, then 2, then 1. She tells the last 2 tables who are considering it quietly that there is 1 left, and they negotiate briefly between themselves, and the couple who negotiates fastest gets the last order, and the other table has the soup instead, which is also good, and in the end nobody goes without. This is the small logistics of the finite. There is only so much of any given thing. It runs out eventually. Her job is to know how much there is, and to distribute it so that everyone who wants some gets some, and to tell people clearly when the thing they want is gone so they can want something else. Carla replenishes from the kitchen as things go, and she tracks what is replenished and what is not, and the picture of what is available at any given moment during the lunch rush is something she is keeping in the background at all times, a kind of running inventory alongside the running tally of who is at which table and what they have ordered and how long ago. This is one of the invisible skills, the inventory management. Not stock inventory, not anything anyone would write in a business textbook, just the knowledge in the body of what is left, so that she does not promise what she cannot deliver. She never promises what she cannot deliver. This is a point of something like professional pride, not loudly held but real. At 1:15, the lunch rush has reduced to its remnants, and she begins the mental wind down into the afternoon, the gradual dialing back of the intensity that has been running since 5:30 this morning. 7.5 hours ago. 7.5 hours. The shift is 8 hours and it feels like 8 hours, and she is 24 and her body can do 8 hours and recover, has done it 3 years running, will do it tomorrow. But the hours are real. They are genuinely heavy in the way that hours of physical and mental work are heavy. And the weight of them is not a complaint, just a fact. She pours coffee for the last few customers with the same precision she brought to the first cup of the morning. Not less attention because she is tired, just attention. That is the standard she holds, not for Mr. Hobart's sake, or for the sake of any principle she has named, but because the people at the counter at 1:15 have just as much right to well-made coffee as Raymond did at 6 in the morning. And the fact that she is tired is her concern and not theirs. This is, she thinks, the thing about the job that is easy to miss from the outside. The job is continuous. It does not ease up because you are tired. It does not ask you how you are doing. It simply presents you with the next table, the next cup, the next ticket, and it is entirely up to you to bring to those things what they require, every time regardless. She has done this every working day for 3 years. She will do it tomorrow. The woman in booth 3 with the magazine, the one who has been there since 1 o'clock, is still there at 1:45. She is on her 3rd cup of tea. She has eaten the lemon cake. She has turned approximately 1/3 of the way through the magazine. She is wearing a blue wool dress and sensible shoes and a pair of small gold earrings, and she is entirely at ease, which Patty finds, in the way she finds many things about the diner, something worth noticing. Not everyone knows how to be at ease in a public space. Some people perform ease, which is different. Some people fill the space with gestures that approximate relaxation while their bodies remain braced. This woman is genuinely at rest, genuinely occupied, genuinely somewhere else while also genuinely here. Patty refills her tea without asking, and sets the pot back on the warmer and continues on without a word, and the woman says thank you softly to the back of Patty's departing shoulder, and this is the entire exchange, and it is sufficient, and it is also in its small quiet way what the diner is for. What the diner is for. She has thought about this. Not at work usually, but at home in the evenings, sometimes when she is eating dinner or sitting with the radio. What is the diner for? The Mells of the world. The corner lot diners in the mid-sized American cities, the ones that are not glamorous and not extraordinary, but that are present reliably before dawn and after dark. They are for Raymond and his newspaper. They are for Dorothy and her novel and her oatmeal. They are for the teenage boys who don't tip, and the woman in the blue wool dress, and the old man with the cherry pie, and the couple in the back booth with the coconut cream shared on one plate. They are places where ordinary days can be conducted with dignity, where breakfast is not an intrusion on anyone's time, where you can sit as long as you need to sit, where someone will see you and bring you what you want and let you be. This is not nothing. In fact, in a city of ordinary people living ordinary lives, it is quite a great deal. She is standing at the end of the counter at 1:55, with 5 minutes before Lorraine arrives, and she can see the whole room from here. The woman with the magazine, the jukebox dark in the corner, the pie case with its one remaining slice of coconut cream, the light through the windows falling at a different angle than this morning, flatter now, the November afternoon having given up the pretense of warmth and settling into a frank chill. She looks at this. She stands at the end of her counter, And she looks at this room. She has looked at it 1,000 times, and she will look at it again tomorrow, and the 1,001st time is not notably different from the other 1,000, except in the fact of being this particular Tuesday afternoon, this particular quality of light, this particular piece of coconut cream in the pie case. She will not remember this specific moment. She will not be able to say later what was particular about the Tuesday in November when she was 24 and working the morning lunch shift at Mel's. The days blur into each other. That is what the days of a working life do. They blur into the pattern of the work, and the pattern is what you remember, not the specific instances, but the moments stack. Whether she remembers them individually or not, they become the shape of the years at Mel's, the years of the pale blue uniform and the white shoes and the 16-pin curls and Raymond's quarter will be a thing she carries for the rest of her life, in the way you carry what your hands have done and what your feet have walked. She carries it now, already, even before she has finished carrying it. The room holds its quiet. The woman with the magazine turns a page. Lorraine is coming through the door. In the long, slow evenings of the life that will come after Mel's, whenever that life arrives, Patty will sometimes think about the smell of that room. Not the dramatic smells, not the burnt bacon on a bad day or the overwhelming rush of 100 orders at once, but the ordinary underlying smell of a diner that has been a diner for years. The coffee in the walls and the grease in the flat top and the warm vinyl of the booths that has held 10,000 breakfasts. She will think of this smell the way you think of certain places from childhood. Not analyzed, not examined, just present in memory as a sensory fact, as true and immediate as the day she first walked through the door. That is the smell of one of the rooms where she was young, where she worked hard and learnt a great deal and served a great many people their breakfasts. The smell of Mel's in the morning, coffee, bacon fat, something sweet from the pie case, the particular quality of a room that opens before dawn and has been heated by 100 bodies and a flat-top grill since before anyone else in the neighborhood is awake. She can smell it now, not literally. She is in her apartment. The soup is on the stove. The radiator is doing its work, but she can smell it the way you smell things from earlier in the day that are still somewhere in the fabric of your clothes and your hair and the particular archive the nose keeps for things encountered too many times to be entirely neutral about. She carries the diner home with her. She always carries it home. This is what she thinks about, if she thinks about anything in the last moments before she falls asleep. Not the specific tables or the specific faces or the specific orders. The room, the smell of the room, the light at 7 in the morning coming through the front windows and hitting the chrome coffee urn so that it glows. Small and ordinary and hers for now. She lets it go. Sleep takes her, and the apartment is quiet and the street is quiet below, and Tuesday in November 1957 is entirely done, and everything that needs to happen will happen again tomorrow. And none of that is something to resist or to run toward. It is simply tomorrow, coming as it always does, whether you are ready or not, and she will be ready. She always is. The afternoon lull at Mel's begins somewhere around 1:30 and lasts until the early dinner rush starts at 5, which is after Patty's shift ends. She will not see the early dinner rush. Her shift ends at 2, or it ends at 2 on the schedule, and it ends at 2:15 or 2:20 in practice, because there is always something to finish before the afternoon girl, whose name is Lorraine, takes over, and because finishing something cleanly before you hand it off is in Patty's view simply what you do. But from 1:30 until 2 o'clock, the diner is in its quietest hour, and this quiet has a quality that is different from the early morning quiet of setup. Setup quiet is the quiet of things not yet begun. Afternoon lull quiet is the quiet of things winding down, and it has in it a note of something that she is not sure she could name if asked, but which feels a bit like settling, the way a room feels when the last guest has gone and the host can stop performing and just be in the room they live in. The customers in the afternoon lull are, on a Tuesday in November, the following: a woman who has been sitting in booth 3 with a cup of tea and a magazine since 1 o'clock, and gives every sign of being in no hurry at all. An older man at the counter, not a regular Patty can identify, who ordered the soup and a piece of cherry pie and ate them both very slowly with the deliberateness of someone for whom this meal is the event of the afternoon. A young couple in the back booth near the jukebox, who arrived at 1:45, clearly in the middle of a conversation that started somewhere outside and has continued without a break since they sat down. The woman is doing most of the talking. The man is leaning forward on his elbows, listening. They have not ordered yet. Patty has given them time. She will approach them again in a few minutes. The jukebox plays something she actually knows the words to. A ballad, slow and sweet. One of those songs that is about something permanent, love, or missing someone, or a place you cannot go back to. The kind of song that works equally well as background to an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, and as something that stops you in your tracks when you hear it alone. In the context of the diner at 1:50 in the afternoon, it is background, but she hears it, which is something. She approaches the couple in the back booth. The woman looks up, a little startled mid-sentence, and then recovers and asks for 2 coffees and a piece of the coconut cream pie to share. The man nods. He has not said a word since they sat down. Patty writes nothing on her pad, because 2 coffees and 1 slice of coconut cream pie is not something she needs to write. She brings the coffees first, sets the cups down gently because the woman is still talking, and Patty moves around the edge of conversations the way you move around furniture in a familiar dark room, navigating without disrupting. Then the pie, 1 plate, 2 forks. She sets the plate between them. The woman does not pause. The man picks up his fork and cuts into the pie and slides half of it to his side of the plate. There is something very ordinary and very particular about this. 2 people sharing a piece of pie. The man who has not spoken, the woman who has not stopped. The ordinary language of a relationship that has its own grammar. Patty does not think about this consciously in these words. She just notices it and moves on. The woman with the magazine in booth 3 has ordered a 2nd cup of tea and a piece of lemon cake and has been here by the time Patty looks at the clock for nearly an hour and a half. This is well within the acceptable range. There is no rush to turn the booth. There is no one waiting. The afternoon is wide and slow. She brings the lemon cake without being asked because the woman's teacup is nearly empty and the cake seems like the natural next step. The woman looks up. "Oh, thank you," she says. She says it with what seems like genuine surprise, as if she expected to have to flag someone down, as if she forgot, somewhere in the middle of her magazine, that there was someone else in this room, as if she had been entirely alone in here for the past 10 minutes. Which in some real sense she had been. Patty says "you're welcome" and refills the tea and goes back to the counter. The older man with the soup and the cherry pie has finished and is counting coins from his pocket onto the counter, slowly, with the care of someone who knows exactly what he is going to find and is still going through the process of finding it. He leaves the correct amount and 10 cents more and puts his coat on with the same slow deliberateness with which he ate the soup. He says "see you" to no one in particular, or to the diner generally, and goes. The door swings closed behind him and the bell above it chimes once. Patty clears his space. The soup bowl still has the faint smell of the vegetable beef broth, which is still good even at 1:50 in the afternoon. She stacks the bowl on the pie plate on the cup and saucer, the way you stack things that are meant to be carried together, the heaviest on the bottom, the lightest and most fragile on the top, and carries it all to the kitchen window. Carl takes the dishes. He is doing prep for the dinner shift now, or beginning to think about it, the afternoon mode of the kitchen, which is quieter than morning but not idle. The stock for tomorrow's soup is going. Something is roasting in the oven. She can smell it. Something that will become a dinner item she will never see served because she will be gone before 5. This is a small, strange thing about working the morning and lunch shift. You are always leaving before the day has fully resolved itself. You come in when it is dark and cold and before most people's days have begun, and you leave in the early afternoon while the city is still fully in motion, and there is a quality of incompletion to this that she has made her peace with, but which is still, when she thinks about it, mildly odd, like reading most of a book and stopping before the last chapter. She does not know what the dinner rush is like at Mel's. She knows it happens. She knows it is served by Lorraine and a woman named Beverly and a cook named Jimmy who comes in at 3 and has an entirely different kitchen temperament from Carl. She knows the dinner menu is larger than the breakfast and lunch menus because she has seen it even though she has never worked it. But the experience of a Tuesday dinner at Mel's is as unknown to her as a Tuesday on the moon. And she has stopped finding this strange. At 10 minutes to 2, Gloria checks in, not with words, just a look down the counter, a slight raising of the eyebrows. This means, "You almost done, because I have to get my things and we overlap for exactly 10 minutes at shift change and we need to use them well." Patty nods. She is almost done. The last 10 minutes of a shift have their own texture. They are not quite the same as any other 10 minutes of the shift. Not because the work is different, but because there is a faint quality of gathering oneself, of beginning the internal transition from shift self to not shift self, which is a real and distinct version of herself that takes a little time to locate. The version of Patty who has been moving and attending and reading people and managing the physical logistics of 51 feet of counter for 8 hours is not the same version of Patty who will walk home and make dinner and sit with the evening. The shift version is particular to this room. Leaving the room, she puts her down somewhere and picks up the other. Lorraine arrives at 1:58. She is 26, 2 years older than Patty, with red hair and a gap between her front teeth that makes her smile look slightly rakish. And she comes in the same way every afternoon, slightly breathless, coat still half-buttoned, as if the trip from wherever she was to here was more complicated than planned. They do their 10 minutes of overlap. Patty tells her the woman in booth 3 is on her second cup of tea and 3rd hour, she's fine, she'll leave when she's ready. The couple in the back booth are still on their coffees and the pie. The cherry pie is sold out. There is 1 piece of coconut cream left. The lemon cake is fresh, Carl put it in yesterday, and it's good. Lorraine writes none of this down, because none of it needs to be written down. She nods. She says, "How was the morning?" Patty thinks about it. She says, "Fine. Good, actually. Good morning." This is an accurate summary. She goes to the coat room. She takes off her apron, folds it in half and in half again the way she always folds it, and sets it on the shelf for the laundry. She unclips her name tag and sets it in its spot. She puts on her coat, buttons it from the bottom the way you button a coat when you have been buttoning it the same way for long enough that the direction is simply what happens. She checks her hair in the small mirror. She is not going anywhere that requires her hair to be a particular way, but she checks it the way you check things that are part of how you present yourself to a world that is not the inside of a diner. She picks up her bag. She goes out through the kitchen because the back door is faster, and Carl is at the stove, and she says, "See you tomorrow, Carl," and he says, "See you," in the particular way he has of saying "see you" that manages to sound both dismissive and warm at the same time, which is a combination she did not think was possible until she worked in this kitchen. She pushes the back door open, and she is outside in the afternoon. November 2:15. The sun low but still there, the air cold, the particular quality of a city mid-afternoon when most people are at work and the streets have that brief, uncrowded quality before the evening opens everything up again. She is in her coat and the cold is on her face and her feet are tired in a way that has been building since 5:30 this morning and is now fully present. She walks. The 9 minutes going home feel different from the 9 minutes coming in, the way all return journeys feel different, even when they cover the same ground. The world is different from this direction. The streets are the same streets, but the light falls differently, and she is a different version of herself. The shift finished, the shoes carrying different weight than they did on the way out. She passes the corner grocery. The display in the window is the same as it was when she passed it at 5:14 this morning. A pyramid of canned goods in the center, some kind of promotional display. She notices this. The fact that it has not changed in the 9 hours since she walked by it, which is logically obvious and still a small surprise. She has been inside a room and the world outside has continued without her, at its normal rate doing what it does. She turns onto her street. The dry cleaners downstairs is open now. The woman who runs it is visible through the window, moving behind the counter, and she looks up when Patty passes and gives a small wave, which Patty returns. They have lived in this approximate configuration for over a year, and they know each other in the way of people who see each other regularly in the context of the same small geography, warmly but without knowing much. The dry cleaner's name is Iris. Iris knows Patty is a waitress because she sees her leave in the uniform. Patty knows Iris has a son who is in school because she can hear him through the ceiling some evenings. This is the extent of it, and it is enough. Not all knowledge of other people needs to go further than this to be real. She unlocks the apartment door and goes in. The apartment is cold, as she expected, and quiet. She leaves her coat on for a moment while she turns on the radiator, which will take 15 minutes to do anything meaningful. The apartment smells like itself. The particular combination of a small space and the things she keeps in it, coffee from the morning, wool from her coat on its hook, something faintly sweet from the half loaf of bread on the counter, the familiar version of a familiar smell. She sits down. This is not something she does much of during the shift. She sits at breaks briefly, but sitting in the sense of sitting down and simply being in a chair is something that belongs to the hours between leaving and returning, and she does it now, in her work shoes still, coat unbuttoned, bag on the floor beside the chair. Her feet, given the opportunity to rest, report back from their shift. The right heel is indeed slightly off. Not bad, not painful, just the first faint signal of something that will become more noticeable over the next few weeks. She notes it. She will check the shoe this evening when she takes it off. She sits for perhaps 10 minutes, maybe 12. She is not thinking particularly about any specific thing. She is decompressing, if that is the right word for it, which it more or less is in the particular way that physical work requires, not thinking away the day but simply letting the body register that the day is over, that the movement has stopped, that the responsibilities have been handed off. The diner is still running without her. This is a fact that she knows without needing to think about it. Lorraine is at the counter. The couple in the back booth may still be there. The jukebox may be playing. Carl has gone home and Jimmy has taken over the kitchen. The coffee urns, the new brew she started at 1:10 before the shift change, are still keeping coffee hot for anyone who needs it. All of that is happening right now on Tuesday afternoon in November of 1957, and she is here in the cold of her apartment in her work shoes. And both of these things are true at the same time. She gets up, she puts the kettle on, not the percolator, not the full ritual of coffee, the kettle for tea, which is what she wants when she is done for the day. She takes her shoes off at the kitchen counter, one hand on the counter for balance, and sets them side by side near the door. Her feet on the linoleum feel, and there is really no other way to put this, like a particular kind of freedom. She has been inside those shoes since 5:30. The difference between inside the shoe and outside the shoe is the difference between held and released. She stands on the cold linoleum in her stocking feet and waits for the kettle. This is the moment she was thinking about, somewhere around 7:30 this morning, in the way that you sometimes carry a small thought through a long day, not dwelling on it, just aware of it. The way you are aware of something pleasant waiting at the end of a thing, not the tea specifically. This specific moment, the shoes off, the kettle on, the shift finished and the evening not yet requiring anything of her. She makes the tea. She takes it to the chair and she sits again, this time without the coat, and she wraps both hands around the cup because the radiator has not yet made its full contribution. Outside the window, the light is still going. November light in the afternoon goes slowly, then all at once, and she can see from her chair the way it is still present on the side of the brick building opposite, a faint orange quality to it now, the late afternoon light doing what late afternoon light does in November, which is to make things look briefly beautiful before going out entirely. She drinks her tea. She is thinking about nothing in particular, or she is thinking about everything in the way that a mind thinks when it is allowed to range freely. A brief consideration of whether to have soup for dinner or eggs, a fragment of a song from the jukebox that is still in her head without her permission, a thought about Dorothy and whether she is still reading the same novel or has started a new one, a physical memory of the weight of the coffee pot across 8 hours, which is not precisely a thought but something the body thinks, 12 to 15 miles. And then she came home and made tea. There is something I want to say about Patty, standing here at the end of her Tuesday, and it is something I find genuinely worth sitting with for a moment. The work she did today was not glamorous. No one has made a film about it. Not really, not in the sense that captures what it actually is. The films about diners are about the diner as a setting, the love story that happens in the booth, the dramatic conversation over a pie plate, the character who passes through. The waitress in those films is a fixture, like the jukebox, like the chrome counter. She pours the coffee and moves on. But the work Patty did today was real, and it was skilled, and it was physically serious, and it required a particular kind of intelligence that is not the kind that gets discussed when people discuss intelligence. The reading of people, the management of the oval path, the arithmetic of need. Who needs what before they know they need it? The memory of 40 orders, the social grace of serving without servitude, of being attentive without being invisible and visible without being intrusive, of making a room of strangers feel, if not welcomed exactly, then at least correctly placed. That is art in its way, a kind of art that leaves almost no record, and she will do it again tomorrow. She will be up at 4:45 and she will pin curl her hair the night before, and the alarm will ring like a small catastrophe, and she will silence it and lie still for 4 seconds and then get up and do it all again. What I find myself genuinely admiring when I think about Patty and the women like her is not the resilience exactly, though the resilience is real. It is the knowledge. The specific, accumulated, hard-won knowledge of a particular room and a particular job and a particular slice of the world, the knowledge that lives in the hands and the feet and the peripheral vision and the part of the brain that tracks 14 stools without counting them. That knowledge is hers. Nobody gave it to her. She earned it one shift at a time. In 1957, there were roughly 800,000 women working as waitresses in the United States. Not 800,000 Patties, not quite, because every one of them is a specific person with a specific apartment and a specific morning and a specific set of regulars, but 800,000 women doing some version of this work, walking their miles, reading their rooms, carrying their coffee pots, going home and taking their shoes off. Most of their names have not been recorded anywhere. The diner at Mel's is still going in that afternoon. Jimmy is in the kitchen, Lorraine is on the floor, the coffee urns are doing what the coffee urns do, the woman in booth 3 may still be there with her magazine, the jukebox, if someone has put in a coin, is playing something. The light has changed now, the November afternoon going fully dark, and the diner from the outside is what it always is in the dark. A warm yellow light, visible from half a block away, the kind of light that makes you think of people inside, and warmth, and the particular smell of coffee and something on the grill. From the outside, late on a Tuesday evening, it looks like the simplest thing in the world. From the inside, it always was more complicated than that. Let that settle for a moment. What Patty did today was what Patty did every day, and the days are all slightly different. One customer from the next, one morning light from the next, one piece of pie from the next, and all of them alike in the way that the days of a working life are alike. Built from the same materials, assembled in a slightly different order, adding up over time to something that is not merely repetition but a kind of expertise. She is an expert at this room. She is an expert at these people. She is an expert at the distance between the coffee urn and table 4, at the weight of a fully loaded tray, at the precise moment to refill a cup before the customer looks around for her. These are not small things. They are not small at all. The evening has come in fully by now, beyond the apartment window, and the radiator is finally doing its work, and the tea has been drunk, and the shoes are by the door, and the day is as done as days get. The soup, she decides. She will have the soup. She goes to the kitchen and opens the refrigerator and takes out what she needs, and the apartment fills slowly with the smell of something warming on the stove, something simple and warm and good, and the evening arranges itself around her the way evenings arrange themselves when you have been up since 4:45 and walked 15 miles and are finally still. Outside, on the street below, there is a sound. A car, then quiet, then someone walking past, footsteps fading, and then silence. The particular silence of a Tuesday night in November in a mid-sized American city, which is not entirely silent, not ever, but is quiet enough that silence is the word for it. In the quiet, in the warmth, Patty stands at the stove and stirs something in a pot and hums something that is probably from the jukebox, probably something she heard this morning at 7 something, one of the 3 songs the garage mechanic put in for a dime before his breakfast. And she does not know she is humming. She never knows she is humming. The soup warms. The radiator hisses. The window holds a reflection of the kitchen light against the dark outside. Tuesday in November 1957 is almost done. Tomorrow she will do it again, and the day will be its own thing, slightly different from this one in ways she cannot yet know. Because that is what days are, the same room, rearranged, the same counter with different people on the stools, the same coffee poured into the same cups for different hands, and she will be there at 5:55, before the door opens, ready. That is a thing worth thinking about, not the readiness exactly, the showing up, day after day before dawn in the shoes she has resoled and the uniform she has ironed, with the pin curls she put in the night before and the lipstick that is part of the job, showing up and doing the work well with the attention it requires in the room where she has spent 3 years learning to be good at this. There is something steady in that, something that a person could rest on, the same way a diner at 2 in the morning, if you passed it with the lights still on, would be a thing to rest your eyes on. Steady, known, present. The soup is ready. She turns off the burner and ladles it into a bowl and takes it to the small table and sits down, and for the first time today she sits at a table with food in front of her with no particular hurry and no one else to attend to and nothing requiring her attention except the bowl and the spoon and the quiet evening around her. She eats slowly. Outside, November continues to do what November does. Cold and darkening and very sure of itself, and the city around her goes on with its Tuesday, and somewhere 2 blocks north on the corner lot, the light at Mel's is still on, warm and yellow in the dark, and Lorraine is behind the counter, and the coffee urns are hissing, and the jukebox in the corner is waiting for someone to put in a nickel. All of it going on, all of it continuing. The room that is as familiar to Patty as any room she has ever known, running without her now until tomorrow morning. When she gets there at 5:14, the setup will begin again. The coffee first, the counter wiped, the pie case checked, the cups set out in their rows on their saucers. Raymond will arrive at 5:56 with his newspaper. Dorothy will arrive with her novel and order her oatmeal. The morning will come up through the big front windows. First the dark, then the blue-grey, then the long gold diagonal stripe that hits the chrome coffee urn and makes it glow, and Patty will be there for all of it, moving along the counter in her white shoes, carrying the coffee pot in her right hand, reading the room the way she has learned to read it, with the particular attention of someone who has spent enough time in a place to know its every register. Let her have the soup. Let the radiator warm the apartment. Let the evening come in soft and dark. Let Tuesday pass gently without fanfare. She has done enough today. She has done more than enough. This is the story of an ordinary working day in an extraordinary ordinary life. A life lived at the counter of a mid-sized American diner, in a pale blue uniform, in white shoes that have been resoled once and will need resoling again, moving between the kitchen and the tables and the coffee urns and the people, day after day, season after season, with the kind of competence that only looks simple from the outside. 800,000 women walking their miles in diners up and down every American town and city, most of their names unrecorded, most of their mornings unwitnessed, except by the people on the stools who needed their coffee, who needed their eggs, who needed someone to see them at 5:56 in the morning before the day had really gotten going. Patty saw them. She saw all of them. Every one. That is the beginning and end of the story, and it is enough. It is more than enough. The soup goes down warm. The spoon circles the bowl slowly. The evening is quiet and the apartment is warm, and Tuesday in November of 1957 settles down around her like a blanket. And she lets it, and somewhere, still humming something she does not know she is humming, she is already almost asleep. Good night.